Good evening. My name is Anita Collins, and I will be speaking to you on domestic violence and how it affects a child. When we think of the word domestic violence, the first thing come to mind is the abuse between intimate partners or the abuse between husband and wives. Well, domestic violence affects more than just intimate partners or husband and wives. It affects children as well. Studies have shown that 3 and 4 million children will be exposed to domestic violence daily. How are children affected by domestic violence? Well, it depends on that child and the situation that they're put in. Some are affected physically. Some are affected mentally. Some are affected socially, and some children are affected emotionally. However the child is affected, it tends to have a short-term and long-term effect on that child's life. When we talk about the physical effect on children, we can look at issues that begin to change within that child's body. Some children will experience headaches. Some would experience stomach aches. Some children have begun to experience bedwetting. The most devastating is that some children actually become sexually abused by their fathers. In many cases, some children have even been killed trying to intervene from their loved one being abused. When a child is affected mentally, that has to do with the mindset. Some children began to feel depressed. Some children began to witness inside voices telling them what to do in some situations when they are being abused. Some children began to be developmentally delayed in school. Others may be affected socially. They isolate themselves from the outside world. They don't want to have anything to do with anyone or anybody. They try to cover up what's going on in the inside. You have some children that actually try to fit in so their peers won't find out who they really are. The greatest impact I believe that domestic violence has on children is the emotional abuse. When children are emotionally abused in domestic violence situation, there is a sense of guilt. They feel shame. They lose love and respect towards one another. They have sleepless nights. All of this began to take toll on that child. Trying to figure out what can they do to stop the emotional abuse. Why does domestic violence exist? Many may have several answers on why domestic violence exists. However, studies have shown that domestic violence exists because it's a cycle or a pattern that has been passed down from generation to generation. And that child was abused when they were younger by their parents. And the cycle just continued. And no one broke the cycle. So therefore, children who grew up in domestic violence homes will have the tendency to be victims of abuse themselves. Now, this is not always the case. Some children grow up to beat the odds, like myself. When we talk about beating the odds, you talk about children who want to get out. Living in a household where you witness violence on an everyday routine, you may feel that that's the way of life now. You feel that everything that comes with a conflict, you can resolve that with violence. Well, that's not always the answer. Some things can be resolved without violence. What can we do as a society to prevent domestic violence. Where research has shown that if people are educated on to know the signs of domestic violence, we may prevent or intervene with some cases being brought across the news. Domestic violence needs to be addressed not only in the homes, but locally and nationally as well. Domestic violence is a situation that affects all of us: children, parents, caregivers, teachers, doctors. It's a situation that affects everyone that is involved. Well, what can we do? We can raise the concerns and issue by bringing it to the public eye. I know many may feel that what goes on in the home should stay in the home. Well, sometimes what goes on in the home needs to be brought to the public attention so people can be aware of what's actually going on in the home. We can enhance social services to help prevent some of these cases of domestic violence. The school system should get involved more with knowing how to detect domestic violence. They should be able to look for signs of children being traumatized, children coming to school that seem like they want to just come and go to sleep, or children coming to school, eating more than often and losing interest in their schoolwork. There are a lot of things that we can do as a society to prevent domestic violence only if we open our eyes more than what we see. Domestic violence just don't go away on its own. It's an issue that needs to be addressed to help save the lives of children. Violence has no place in the home. It shouldn't be allowed to constantly affect children on a daily basis. Children deserve a brighter future. Children deserve to go to a home where they can feel safe. When we begin to intervene and don't just look at this, oh, it's their problem, we can save a lot of children's lives. I'm not an advocate for domestic violence and how it affects children, because I have been the odds of being a victim of domestic violence. I didn't let domestic violence take a hold of me. I began to speak out and cry out for help until one day I was rescued from domestic violence. So I'm asking you today, don't think about domestic violence as being just another story that the family needs to address. Think about that. If you was in that situation, what would you want someone to do? Would you want someone to intervene and help you? Well, yes. So when we think about domestic violence, don't just think about domestic violence as being an intimate partner abuse or abuse with spouses. It is a problem that affects children on a daily basis that needs to be prevented. It is a problem that if we work together as a whole, we can stop domestic violence.